sounds like I think we're good to go here in a couple of seconds. So in just a second, Ribbon has a star. We're getting the green light. I think we're gonna be getting into game number 1. We're gonna have a draft. We have a reminder to everybody. You're gonna see some bans, but outside of the bans, there's no Blastoise, there's no Leafeon, there's gonna be no Inteleon and no Umbreon because these are some of the outside bans that we're gonna see tonight. So this should be super fun to see. I am just so ecstatic to kind of get to the heart of this. What kind of bans? We'll start with Draku. What type of bans do you think, with what's left on the board, are we going to see?
Well, there's still some very consistent characters that are in the metagame right now. A character that we've been seeing a ton of, at least in the Asia League that's been going on recently, is Sylveon. It's a very strong evolution pick. We know all the evolutions are in a very dominating position at the moment, but I think Sylveon is starting to become, I would say, like, starting to get their round of I would say brokenness in the metagame. But I would say Sylveon as an individual character is is a pretty strong character, but it does pair really well with other, for example, special attackers on your team. So it could be more of a supportive role by amplifying your teammates using that Hyper Voice. Again, Hyper Voice has that special defensive shred on anyone it hits. And then you can also have a more, I guess, a harasser kind of role if you pick that Mystical Fire, bulkier attacker role that we don't really see in that category. As we see here, Liko first picking the Sylveon.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it's such a safe attacker, right? Like, it's kind of like a Pikachu in a way, but I think it's a better Pikachu because you can play it into a number of different comps. So you're not really tying yourself to one way or another. You can kind of react with what the enemy team does. And looking at the bans, T-Tar obviously a strong one. The Hoopa ban is a strong one, but I think they just want to keep Wailord off of that Hoopa. What they're able to do with it is just incredible. So not bad bans there on the side of Ethereal.
Yeah, definitely because of the global bans banning out Blastoise. I mean, it really paves the way for Trevenant being the best defender in the available defenders that you can select if it's not banned out, right? Either globally or through the outside and or inside bans, right? So it's definitely going to be a very strong first pick option. We don't see any Umbreon here, so that's one defender that we're not seeing either in being represented as a band or being represented as a character being picked. Looking at these team compositions, I would say everything is pretty safe. The more interesting picks here might be like the Alola Ninetales, for example, but even that is still a very strong, and like you were saying, a word that we're always going to be talking about with Pokemon Unite is the word consistency, right? Alola Ninetales, very consistent Pokemon, especially when the other team doesn't have something like a Speedster, which has pretty strong dive presence. So this game is definitely going to be a game of attackers, especially with 2 being represented on either team.
Yeah, I mean, Ninetales. I mean, it's just definitely one of those stronger control mages. You can really, kind of control the enemy from even being able to dive. Like, I mean, really the only dive that I really see for the side of V1 is that Gyarados. But other than that, I mean, that Ninetales is going to keep people, at arm's length away with that Blizzard, Avalanche, or, I mean, God forbid, maybe we even see something like a, Dazzling Gleam Aurora Veil. I mean, that could be a potential play, but I think that the safety of the Blizzard Avalanche is just so strong with the Ninetales, and like you said, very consistent.
Yeah, I think the big question here for moveset wise, I think, is going to be Liko on that Sylveon. You have 2 mages on the other side, so it can really benefit using Mystical Fire, but you have a very strong special attacker on your team, so Hyper Voice can also be a really strong tool to amplify those solar beams that are most likely going to be coming out of this Venusaur. I believe it was an eject one I saw for that battle item, so it leads me to believe that it is going to be a pretty standard Venusaur with that solar beam set.
Yeah, Solar Beam definitely seems super safe. I mean, maybe if you have something like the Phalanx that we've seen a lot more recently, maybe you go the Giga Petal, but looks like on the bot side, a lot of that farm does go over to the side of Ethereal, but we do have a little bit of a jungle invade here, Draku. Dwebble trying to take away some farm from this routes.
Yeah, Dwebble not the best invader, but when you see something like a route on the other side, it also does not have very good last hitting capabilities here. Rustic forced to use that eject button just to get out of the central area. But of course, with that EXP share, your job is basically done, right? If you're able to get a buff, perfect. If you're not, you're still getting that passive EXP with that experience share.
Yeah, and survived, didn't give up any additional XP from the KO. They do go back down to the bottom path with that Sylveon. We might see Sylveon make their way up, but it doesn't look like it. 3 members on the side of V1 here to take down these birds, and a lot of the farm does go over to V1. Does look like the Altaria, however, goes over to the side of Ethereal.
Yeah, looks like it's kind of hard to tell where all of that experience went over to. It looks like in this bot lane here, they're able to score off huge with a couple of points. Already 28 points on the board for version 1. And looks like both teams right now, again, they are pretty high scaling Pokemon on either team, right? You want that Curlia to be at level 8 to get that evolution. And then, of course, you want that Venusaur to get to level 7 to get that primary damaging ability here. But here we go. Lico's going to enter into the jungle of Ethereal, is able to get 1 KO on the Alola Ninetales, and looks like they're able to get off scotch-free as well. Get that 1 KO, return back over to the right side, and getting ever closer to that level 8 Unite move.
That's massive. Yeah, here we got the center birds spawning on in. Blaziken not quite online, as that Blaziken kind of stuck in that Combusken area. Bottom side, though, we do have the Trevenant that has evolved finally, and oh, that big, there you go. We talked about it earlier. That defensive shred of that Hyper Voice showed to be very, very useful there to taking down that Trevenant.
Yeah, we got about 30 seconds left before the first set of objective spawns. Alola Ninetales once again going down. I think the one thing that's going to be very difficult for this Alola Ninetales is that it is going to be outranged almost significantly by the other special attackers on your team, right? You can maybe catch out this Sylveon with that combination of Avalanche and Blizzard, but with that Solar Beam, it's going to be very difficult to get really anything going. We're already seeing that here. Level 5 only on this Alola Ninetales, just ticking into level 6 as we get into the first set of objectives.
Wow, that KO by Mhal onto the Kirlia was pretty massive there. And you see V1, they're just going to take a kind liking to this Registeel that has spawned. They're just going to immediately shred it. Here comes the Solar Beam secure. It is secured by version 1. They're going to have a nice little buff to their special attack and attack for the next 90 seconds.
Yeah, they're going to walk on to this Tier 1 goal zone as well. The siege has begun. 4 members of either team here, all-rounders, hanging out on the top lane, just off-laning as we normally do. Huge Verdant Anger is going to find 4 characters are going to go down on the side of Ethereal, and version 1 is going to take this first goal zone and might have some time to get some scores here on this Tier 2 goal zone as well. I believe that was 50 points among those 3 characters, and version 1 is going to blow this lead wide open.
Yeah, that's massive. 177-0. Big goose egg on the side of Ethereal. But it's not over. I mean, there's still plenty of time in this match. There's 6 minutes left. Plenty of time to utilize some of this catch-up XP that will be on the map. There is still a Regieleki in this top lane, but it doesn't look like either team is taking a whole lot of priority. They're going to take a lot of their farm, any of those yellow dots that are up, and kind of wait for the next team fight.
Yeah, I'm worried for Ethereal in order to check this Venusaur. There's not many Pokemon in the attacker role that can outrange a Venusaur. You know, there's maybe Snipe Shot with Inteleon, of course, that is banned out for this game because of that outside ban. There's maybe like Decidueye, but the only thing that can really check a character like Venusaur with this range is, for example, another special attacker or maybe even a speedster. Another Verdant Anger finds its way on this island of Tier 1, and looks like 4 members down. Going to be going down. 2 characters, or at least 2 players getting a KO streak of 2 for themselves. That Venusaur getting a 2-piece, as well as this Gyarados, who is fully online as well. Most likely got a couple of stacks in this top path too, and it looks like a snowball of a game as we head into the halfway point of the game. 236-0 already, Kyle.
Yeah, it's not looking very good. And whatever the opposite of Caster's curse is, Draku, is what you have going on and talking about this Venusaur. They are scaling nicely. Level 11 already, make it level 12. And like you said, it doesn't seem like Ethereal has any sort of answer to it. They have, the Registeel has spawned in this bottom path. Sylveon's going to try to poke away this Ninetales. Registeel going to probably set back. And looks like this Regieleki has walked in onto the side of Ethereal. So more points are going to be starting to rain on in, and just like that, Gardevoir also going down, and they're going to be able to kind of min-max some of their points here and get a nice overcap.
Yeah, I'm not sure what Ethereal was trying to go with there. You got to remember when a Reggie Alekius crashed into a goal zone, that also means you cannot get healing off of that goal zone as well. So especially if a Reggie Alekius walked into that goal zone, it might be best just to forego that goal zone. I mean, you do get experience with those NDs that spawn when you lose those tier 1s, but you're not really getting a whole lot of value unless you're able to KO the enemy team as they're getting their scores in.
Yeah, it looks like version 1 is not done harassing Ethereal in their own side of the jungle. This Crustal is just making sure that really no one on Ethereal can walk up to this Ice that has been kind of chilling down here in this bottom lane. Looks like version 1 is going to take that no contest, and for the next 90 seconds, their HP is going to be regenerating. So that's going to be pretty beneficial to those tanky things like that Crustal, or even to some extent that Eldegoss.
Yeah, with about a minute and a half left, I think what we can do is start to theorize maybe what Ethereal can do to get back into this game. I think if there's a character that really needs a standout moment in this next 3.5 minutes, is going to be this Gardevoir, the central area carry for Ethereal, right? One of the most devastating Unite moves in the game. If you're able to land that Fairy Singularity on more than just a single target, right? If you're able to get that Unite move off on a couple of different characters in that black hole, you can quite literally immobilize them completely and allow the rest of your team to get that damage they need to get that experience for your team. But right now, I mean, when you look at version 1's team, you know, those types of the Unite moves, Fairy Singularity, works really well when there's a lot of team members standing next to each other. But when you look at version 1's team, they're not going to really stand or make that job easy for you, right? You have pretty high mobility characters in the Sylveon. You have a character like Venusaur way in the back line. So getting that Unite move on multiple characters is going to be hard too.
Exactly. This Regieleki, though, is gonna be defended by Ethereal. They're gonna have plenty of time to take that off the map before this Rayquaza, but look at this Gyarados. Gyarados is just looking for a pick off right at this Ray fight, and if Ethereal walks in that top lane, sitting at level 12, like that's gonna be a problem for almost any singular Pokemon that walks into that space.
Yeah, well, 4 team members are walking to the top path of the central area, so Gyarados is going to get vision on all of those. Solar Beam going to land on that tree. They are going to recover some of their HP back with that passive ability that just has been procced as well. So this Trevenant has to be a little more conservative as they proceed in this team fight. And right now, version 1 is bullying Ethereal out of the central area. They're trying to find a waypoint here. They're going to use that Blissful Assistance kind of as a waste more to maybe keep their Gardevoir online, but this fight is going to reset, and the longevity of this fight is definitely going to go over to version 1 with those Solar Beams being hurled from way downtown.
Yeah, and like you said, they have not had to answer trades back and forth between the 2 tanks on each side. So, but here comes Gyarados with a huge Dragon Current, takes out 2. Now this Sylveon is gonna shred down the Blissey, and it's only this Gardevoir who has been pushed on out of this Ray Pit, and it's gonna allow version 1 to almost take this uncontested. Here comes the Solar Beam secure, and that is going over to the side of V1, Draco.
Yeah, have the green light all ready for your team. As soon as that Blaziken goes down, it's time for you to take the Rayquaza off of the map. Your team has one of the best secures in the game in that Solar Beam from Venusaur specifically. And, well, that was all version 1's game in game number 1.
Ooh, yeah, game 1, version 1. All the ones there, 297 to Goose Egg. That's rough, buddy. Version 1 looked really hot there right out of the gate. It didn't seem like they really looked back at all. I mean, look at those KO numbers. Only 2 KOs for that Gardevoir. We did have a couple, I mean, look at the damage. I mean, nothing too crazy, but version 1 controlled that map front to back.
Yeah, when you take a look at those details in both the KOs and the assists, lots of donuts there. Donuts as in zeros, unfortunately. It's not the type of donuts you like to find on a Sunday morning or a Saturday morning with the fresh bakery donuts coming out. Definitely not what you want to see there if you're Ethereal. You still got one more game. Again, if you're just new to the Articuno League and most other leagues, they are playing to a best of 3, and this tournament is a double elimination tournament in this top A. But it's definitely not the start that you want to see. A 13,000 damage Blaziken is definitely not going to help you out.
No, that's super rough. Yeah, it just didn't seem like they had an answer to really anything that V1 wanted to throw at them. Liko 72k damage. I mean, they're just shredding that tank. I mean, Trevenant taking 73k damage that's kind of what you want your tank to do, but unfortunately they didn't really have a whole lot of follow-up because Venusaur just kind of had those beams for free. There's nothing that Ethereal was able to hit that Venusaur with, like you said, time and time again. They're just outranged, just completely outranged, and that's just so hard if you don't have a speedster.
Yeah, this is the I guess a very strong learning lesson for those of you that are watching in why last pick Pokemon can be so devastating. I believe Locke was the 10th and final pick for both of these teams, and well, because you're the final pick, that means the opposing team can't counter that Pokemon at all, right? And so Venusaur, kind of like Decidueye, doesn't have a whole lot of mobility if you are running that Solar Beam set. And, if you're able to outrange the enemy team entirely, you don't really have to worry about that, right? The other team doesn't have a single speedster. Their dive is pretty subpar. You have the Blaziken, not the best form of dive, and you don't have a whole lot of burst as well to pair along with that dive. And so Venusaur, you can really put anything in that role. Venusaur, Decidueye can also kind of function as that as well, but that Unite move that Locke was using was devastating every time it came out of this Venusaur.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's rough. It's rough when you don't really have an answer to a single Pokemon. If you're Ethereal, I mean, what do you do in this situation? What type of draft do you need to think about? Because, like, to me, I think if you're not going to if you're not going to be able to outrange them, you need some sort of dive that can get into that back line and take out that Venusaur. I mean, maybe, you throw into that top lane. If you want to keep that Gardevoir jungle in that top lane, you throw something like Meowscarada. Maybe you throw, Zoroark's just really tough in the lane, but maybe an Absol, something that can just peel behind those tanks and just get to that back line.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different options. Of course, Leafeon being the permanent global ban for the season definitely makes the job of these long-range attackers a lot easier. If you can remind me, who was the team that banned out the Inteleon?
Let me double check, but I believe it was... I want to say it was Ethereal that banned them out. Let me double check. Make sure I'm not making things up like I love to do. No, it was Ethereal that banned Inteleon, and V1 banned that Umbi.
Yeah, so I mean, there's still a lot of options to counter something like a Venusaur. Again, just a Speedster would work very strongly. There's still a number of Speedsters that could have been selected, with Leafeon being the one that was banned out. I don't remember the inside bans because I was so caught up on the outside bans.
Hoopa Titar. And then I don't remember what V1 banned.
Again, still a number of
right.
counter options for a character like Venusaur, right? Because you can pick any of the other speedsters would work really well. I also don't know how deep of a roster Ethereal has. I know Josh does play a lot of all-rounders. I know Gary and Avery are mostly, I've played with them mostly in the supportive role, and of course Smash plays a lot of different roles. I'm not super familiar with Barry, but again, Speedster would have been a very strong option for their team. I mean, shoot, they can also just go Zoro Comfy if they have that in their pocket. I know Josh has been practicing a little bit of Zoro, but I'm not super familiar how confident they are basically dedicating 2 character slots to their team if they were to go that strategy.
Yeah, Zoro's like, it's kind of one of those weird Pokemon. It seems like if there's a lot of CC on the map, it's just one of those Pokemon that seems to, if you fall behind early, you're gonna have a really bad time. But if you can get a couple picks early and scale ahead of your team, you could kind of just snowball. It's kind of one of those weird Pokemon that's really strong in certain niche situations still, but there's just so much CC in the meta right now that it's tough.
Yeah, I mean, all speedsters are pretty volatile, right? I mean, they get going really early, and you can get a number of picks because you have that really strong early game, but because you have a fairly shallow health pool, it's very easy to get KO'd at one mistake, and all of a sudden, 1 or 2 KOs handing over to the other team. That lead you built up the entire game is now gone once we get to the 2-minute mark. which you know, for a lot of speedsters and definitely a few all-rounders, the team fight that ensues at that 2-minute mark is definitely hard to stay alive for these low health pool characters like Zoroark, like other speedsters, and even some all-rounders too.
Yeah, exactly. And Cramorant was banned last game too. They're gonna get another ban today. I'm not sure who normally plays Cramorant, but I see the Machamp ban. That seems very targeted towards Smash.
Yeah, definitely a targeted towards Smash. I think Josh also plays Machamp too, so it's kind of a 2-in-1 for that ban specifically. But you know, it looks like a T-Tar is no longer going to be able to be selected here. One character that I theorized myself, and it's kind of an interesting thing when you think about the relationships between Pokemon. I mean, what is one character that really gets is at a disadvantage when T-Tar is on the field? Is when I think of a character, I think of Metagross specifically. I'm surprised that a lot of teams don't pick up Metagross more often, because Metagross, the whole thing about this character is building up shields with the various abilities, and well, T-Tar gets rid of all that because it is a true damage-oriented Pokemon. So I'm surprised we don't see a whole lot of Metagross. I was watching a lot of the Asia League. There wasn't a whole lot of either of those two characters. And strangely enough, there was a lot more Metagross than there was T-Tar, and T-Tar wasn't being banned out very often.
Yeah, like seeing T-Tar, watching it in Underdunk this past week, and then just watching some other things, it seems like it's a better like 5th pick than it is like a 1st pick. Like it's good into certain comps, but yeah, like you said, there are a lot of Pokemon that are like directly counter, like you said, Metagross. So another one that I think of a lot is Aegislash. I mean, you don't see Aegislash a ton right now, but you know, Aegislash is very dependent on some of the shields in that shield form. So Metagross just kind of shreds right through it. Same with kind of, you know, Blissey to an extent. You know, there's a lot of shields that Blissey is able to give, whether it's with the Unite move or with some of the other abilities that it has. So we do have a Blissey on the board. V1, another strong draft, though. They're going to go again with that Gyarados, but they're going to be the ones that take in the Blaziken this time.
Yeah, I would say V1's team all around just very consistent for all of the characters. I would say, again, the most interesting one is Snorlax, but even then, Snorlax is a very strong, very powerful defender option. If you look at Ethereal's team, you know, of course, I'm very biased towards this Decidueye pick, but the one thing that I'm concerned of with this Ethereal team is foregoing your, I guess, 3rd and 4th pick to one of them being a Mimikyu, especially when you look at this other team. They are very bulky. Like you see this Sylveon. It is of course an attacker, but Sylveon is one of the more bulkier of the roster of attackers, and one of the things that Mimikyu really thrives off of is getting those resets on your abilities by KOing the enemy team. So what I think about with this Mimikyu, it's most likely going to be a Shadow Claw Mimikyu, but you know, you look at version 1's team, it's very difficult to get those resets on your Shadow Sneak by getting KOs if the enemy team is very high in their overall health pool, and Mimikyu isn't the bulkiest of the all-rounder category, and they have a lot of mid-range damage with this version 1 team, so I'm worried that this Mimikyu is not going to be able to get the resets and the KOs that it needs to get its gimmick going.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those tougher ones, and they are going to be taking this Decidueye to the jungle. I love Decidueye. I don't think, I mean, you look at the side of version 1, they don't really have anything that can get to the Decidueye unless, like, you know, Blaziken or Gyarados can dive into it. So Decidueye definitely has the best range here. I'm excited to see what they're able to do with it, especially in that jungle slot.
Yeah, Decidueye does have the best range, but I don't see an exact target that the Decidueye want to shoot other than just shooting at the enemy team, right? The version 1 doesn't really have anything to contest this Decidueye, but at the same time, as the Decidueye player myself, when I look at this version 1 team, I think it's going to be a hard matchup because I don't have a target. I don't have a very squishy attacker that I'm aiming at, for example, like a Gardevoir or Chandelure or something that I can outrange. I'm just shooting kind of into the enemy team, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And look at this. We got another kind of thing that's been evolving over the last few weeks. We have 4 people pushing top on the side of V1. They're looking for these 850 birds. Are going to be, the fight's going to start engage. Big Hyper Voice is going to shred down. Eldegoss going down pretty quick here. Espeon is a little bit late to the party. Looks like the damage has been done, Draco.
Yeah, definitely. It was a fairly conservative fight. Of course, 1 KO going over to version 1, but it's definitely a stronger early game for our friends on the orange team. Of course, we want to get that Decidueye to become level 7. I think they're going to have their central area pretty much uncontested unless the Sylveon has something to say about it. It looks like the Espeon doesn't... I don't think this Espeon has vision on the Sylveon. Can they get this blue buff away from the Decidueye? They do, and this Decidueye has to be really careful. Looks like that Sylveon has that Hyper Voice once again, and they're going to be sending them back to the Pokemon Center with the power of that Hyper Voice, and looks like this Decidueye is not going to be there for this central area birds that have just spawned on the map, Kyle.
Yeah, that was our blue buff said. That Sylveon, but Gyarados is going to dive on into this Mimikyu. Mimikyu's going to dash on away from any of that fight. Overheat's going to clean up the rest of those birds, so... despite everything, I think version 1 had a pretty strong showing there. Another Hyper Voice. See, again, when you have such a tanky Pokemon like a Crustle, that Hyper Voice just shreds right through all those shields.
Yeah, I'm concerned for this Decidueye. Just now hitting level 7. I don't know if they have a stacking item attached to them. I think they do have an attack wave, but I think it's going to be pretty difficult for this Decidueye to get any stacks unless they get a full team wipe on the enemy team. Again, very bulky across the board for our version 1 team. Oh my gosh, a nice heavy slam finds its way on 3. No follow-up though, but again, I think this is going to be kind of a tale of two cities in this bot lane, continuing to brawl over and over again, not getting a whole lot of KOs because of how bulky one of these teams are. And it looks like now version 1 is starting to pool around this bottom objective, and both teams have really strong forms to secure. One of them with that Spirit Tackle, they won with this character here, Overheat, level 8 on lock already, so they have ability to stance change whenever they need to.
Yeah, absolutely. It looks like V1 is looking to start and engage. Big heavy slam, but that's only going to find them the back of the Pokemon Center. Looks like Ethereal is going to make their way towards this Regice. Looks like Josh or Barry is going to start ripping this Regis ice, but they're going to be going down. A big double KO by this Sylveon, and just like that, now V1's going to turn on the Regice, take that themselves. Top lane, though, looks like Mimikyu is able to clear out that Regieleki.
Yeah, there's, when you look at version 1's team, specifically for this Sylveon, I don't see very much that can contest the Sylveon if they're able to get to the backline. Of course, this Decidueye can outrange the Sylveon, but the Sylveon uses that Unite move like it did there, KOing the Espeon in that engagement and then just walking up to the Decidueye. There's not a whole lot that can contest the Sylveon, especially when you have the lower cooldowns for your ability that comes with that Unite move.
Looking at the map and the map state, 145.93 slight advantage on the score side to version 1. Unfortunately for them, they have lost that tier 1 goal up that top side, but that's going to allow them a lot of ability to grab some of their farm. Crustle is looking for a score, but they're going to find the back of the Pokemon Center again, shredded down by that Hyper Voice.
Looks like this. I think that's Rustic on the. Yeah, it is Rustic on the Snorlax, doing quite a bit of damage, dancing around these Spirit Shackles. And looks like right now the Decidueye is forced to use that eject button. Luckily, they did have the eject button on lock here, but the Sylveon again is going to walk up to that Decidueye using that Hyper Voice again and getting that KO quite easily too. Overheat's going to find its way on the Crustle. KO streak of 2 for the Blaziken as well. And version 1, a little bit of a slower start, but it's starting to become a snowball of a game like we saw in game number 1.
Oh my gosh, yeah, and this is gonna be trouble here, Draco. Pokemon are just falling on the side of Ethereal. This Blaziken is heating up at his Nashville hot right now, and Rustic is doing an amazing job of frontlining, utilizing that heavy slam to knock up not just 1 or 2 Pokemon, but sometimes 3, and just allowing all those stuns to go through and hit the map. And look at that, maybe a potential for a huge overcap in that top side.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot that can protect our very squishy backline from this both the Blaziken and the Sylveon for version 1. I mean, you have a Crustle, right? But, you don't really have any strong forms of displacement from Crustle. You have X-Scissor, of course, but it's not as strong as, say, a Trevenant or a Snorlax that is heavy slamming above it or over it. And so this Decidueye might not be feeling as safe as it should be, especially when you have some of these characters on version 1 on their team.
Yeah, and that was actually a pretty big win here for Ethereal. They were able to take that Regieleki, not only that, but get a couple of key picks to get some catch-up XP. Knock tries to go in the backline, but Molinaki is going to try to dive right on it. And that Mimikyu and the Blaziken able to clean that Decidueye up. And just like that, tic-tac-toe, Ethereal is going down and Molinaki has heated up.
Yeah, they're able to get the Regieleki into that tier 2 goal zone, but at what cost, right, Kyle? I mean, you lost a lot of your carries in that last engagement. The Crustle might be going back over to the right side as well. So, you're able to get some scores on this tier 2, but you did hand over a ton of experience in an already experienced leading team in version 1.
Yeah, level 13 Blaziken right now is... Yeah. Terrifying, and now you just have a level 13 Gyarados. I mean, those are two Pokemon that you really do not want to see hit their power spikes, especially at this point in the match. It's going to be a tough hill to climb if you're Ethereal, especially down a game already. They're going to need something. You're going to need to pump some experience into this Decidueye. You want this Mimikyu to hit level 13. There's just not a whole lot of avenues, especially with version 1 kind of setting up, and they're ready for this Rayquaza already.
Yeah, it's definitely a stronger game for our Ethereal team. Again, that bar is set really low as they did not score a single point in the last game. So definitely a stronger, I guess, middle or beginning to middle game for our Ethereal friends. But double time in 10 seconds for these teams. Again, it is a best of 3 game, and version 1 looking to lock in their semifinal appearance.
Yeah, Rayquaza has hit the map. We are in the final stretch. All points are doubled. Version 1 looking for an avenue, maybe for a quick pick off here of one of the squishier targets. Rustic is kind of just showing some bait, maybe trying to bait out a heavy slam. Topside path of 4 members of Ethereal looking to push in on this Blaziken.
Yeah, Ethereal definitely needs this Rayquaza to get into this game. They have a tier 1 to work around to potentially score in huge, right? They're still down about 150 odd points, though. Looks like the Snorlax is going to get a huge engage with that heavy slam, followed up by the power nap, knocking up 3, potentially 4 characters. And yeah, you have that plus ability with the focus blast on the Blaziken, an easy confirm for the Blaziken on the opposing team's bird Pokemon. And with that, this is going to be an easy sweep for version 1. All of their team members are still on the field, and it looks like version 1 is going to be taking game number 2 almost as confidently as game number 1.
Yeah, that's going to be 2-0 for them. They're going to be going on to the top 4 winners side of the bracket. So that's going to be, given anything crazy happening over the next minute or so, but it doesn't look like Ethereal is going to be able to put up the numbers that they're going to need to in order to combat some of these points, and then some of the KOs that just rained down. Another double KO, make it a triple piece for this Blaziken. 825, 129. That's a tough hill to climb up, but they do have that loser side of the bracket to look forward to.
Yeah, everything now is really just a formality, and almost another team wipe for version 1, just getting those numbers back up. They might go for a late playoff dance party to end off round number 1 for these 2 teams. But if you're watching this and you're seeing kind of these stomps of games between game number 1 and game number 2, still a lot of learning lessons for both these teams and also as viewers as well. But more importantly, what these last 2 games have really made important is the importance of draft, right? Drafting, the draft process, and drafting, characters that are not only consistent but also can combat most of the roster of Pokemon Unite, right? In the game number 1, Venusaur again was pretty much uncontested. In this game number 2, I think the downfall of Ethereal was, putting together a team that can both support a Decidueye that is going to be your carry, but also like characters among your roster that can combat the enemy team. Unfortunately, I don't think this Mimikyu as a character, not specifically talking about the player, but the character, makes it very difficult to be enabled because of the team that you're looking at.
Yeah. I mean, you got a lot of strong picks on version 1. I mean, that's just kind of comes with the territory of being experienced, right? I mean, version 1 is a team that's been kind of around for a while. They've been in Articuno Unite League. They've won Articuno Unite League a couple of times at this point. They've placed pretty decently in other grassroots tournaments like Underdunk, and they've obviously played a lot together throughout the UCS season. So very experienced team, so they're going to know how to draft around their strengths, but also around what the enemy is putting together. And you saw that here. They looked very strong, and if you're gonna come for the champs, you're gonna have to go for the crown. And V1's definitely up for the challenge to defend it.
Yeah, I think kind of what we were talking about before this set even started was some characters that I thought, or I guess what we thought is going to be strong picks throughout today's event. And I think if there's a character that's really made a point to have some counters against, or at least have an answer to, is going to be this Sylveon. I think this character is coming out to be one of the strongest and more consistent picks. Again, there comes that word again. Consistency is the name of the game, especially for your first or second or third pick options. And Sylveon is a character that doesn't have a whole lot of direct counters, right? You have two different play styles that you can play Sylveon. Very bulky attacker, very supportive for your team or debuffing the enemy team. And teams are going to need an answer for this character.
Yeah, I think we talked about it. I think it's just so safe. I don't think there's like a whole lot of answers to it. I think that's like what's so good about it is that there's not anything that like hard counters it. It does a lot of things very well. It's not like the best special attacker at like one thing. Like it doesn't have the best range. It doesn't have like the best CC ability. It doesn't have like the best regeneration, but it does all of those things very well. So it's super safe. And it's just hard to play around it. Like if you play double dive, then you know that the Sylveon's probably going to be going with that mystical fire draining kiss build. But if you go double tank, kind of go to a beefier comp, you know that they're going to be rocking with that hyper voice. So it's just so hard to play around.
I agree. If there's if there's anything that can defeat a Sylveon, I think Decidueye might make a pretty good argument for that. Maybe even a Venusaur that can burst down an enemy special attacker that doesn't have that range to contest you. But then that Sylveon just goes Mystical Fire, and then all of your mage prowess gets debuffed by that special attack debuff that Mystical Fire has built in as a secondary ability.
Yeah, it's tough. But overall, GG's. Good luck to Ethereal, who's going to be going on into your losers side.